Final Fantasy VII Remake on the PlayStation 4. Yeah. It tends to be a full page. It tends to be a full page itself. So, Final Fantasy VII Remake on the PlayStation 4. Teen-rated game. You know, they didn't leap into the 18 rated itself, so they kept it at teen. You're looking at price-wise itself. PlayStation Store are currently selling it for around £60, £75 for the digital deluxe edition. You could get the physical standard copy for around £50. The deluxe edition, unknown at the moment whether or not they're going to be selling the disc deluxe edition as it is, but I haven't found it anywhere. And the statue edition, which is the one that we got, which comes with the figurine, the massive motorcycle, and the digital deluxe collector's case edition with the still tin, art book, the extra codes for extra summons, and that was £265 in total. Game itself requires at least 91 gigs of solid data, so you need at least say about 100 just to be on the safe side. It says on the back of the game case 100 gig. And we're going to start off this breakdown just like we do with any other review that we're actually doing. So the very first thing that we're going to look into is audio, sound effects, and soundtrack. And hands down, this game sounds absolutely mind-blowingly amazing. The soundtrack, as expected, a lot of the songs were remastered versions or remade versions of the original, so you get a little bit of nostalgia with some of the songs because you can hear the tunes that are going off and you're like, oh, I remember this tune in the original, but they have been all redone, and the soundtrack to this game is breathtaking. It really is. There's a lot of songs that I love from it, and I can definitely say that I would love to be able to play the soundtrack off of Spotify if I can. But I mean, this is week launch, you know, so it's not there yet, so we may have to wait for a little bit. But the soundtrack to this game is 10 out of 10, absolutely stunning, mind-blowing. Square Enix, you did an incredible job. Just well done. Just absolutely well done. In terms of the audio effects and the voice acting, again, I cannot fault the game in any way. The combat sound effects, the magic sound effects that they utilize in the game, absolutely spot on. Can't fault them in any way. There was no issues from my point of view from putting 45 hours into the game. Everything in this game in terms of audio or sound effects or anything like that, absolutely spot on. Now with the voice acting, no complaints. Again, all the characters, every single character was voiced perfectly for me. I had no issue with any of the characters that were in the game from start to finish. So there's no point deductions. There's nothing. It is just a pure golden pass for me. From the audio and the sound effect aspect of this game, 10 out of 10, absolutely satisfied, and it just blew me away. And a lot of the music contributed towards the emotion within the game itself. And when a game can make me feel, then it gets even more positiveness from me, 100%. So good job on that aspect. Graphics, texturing, weather effects. Graphically, hands down, this is probably the best looking game I've ever played in my life. 100%. Especially with the cutscenes that are in the game, especially when you enter a Shinra building and you see a massive video display, and you get whisked into that display in a way, and it showcases some incredible colors. This game is just bloody gorgeous in every angle. I didn't see any texture glitches. I didn't see any texture bugs. I didn't see anything whatsoever that would knock any sort of pointing off this game. The animation worked well. The graphic effects all worked well. Even with the magic looked absolutely mind-blowing. The limit breaks looked absolutely stunning as well. And I really can't say a negative thing about how this game looks. And for me, like I said, there was no issue with any errors in the texturing, like missing pixels or bad effects or bad texturing effects. There was none of that. And in some of the scenes where you actually get to see a large space and you get to see the background, the foreground, and all of that, it looks absolutely mind-blowing. It really does. Square Enix say yet again, I can't fault you in any way. This is the best looking game I have ever played, ever. And it hypes me up more to see what you plan on doing with the next section of the actual game itself. But just looking at the characters, looking how beautiful they are. Cloud, Barrett, Tifa, they Aerith, Jesse, their character models are beyond stunning in so many ways. They look absolutely fantastic. And if you have watched the CGI movie of Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, you'll know exactly what you're about to experience, because they are very similar, very, 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 very similar in both Advent Children and the remake of Final Fantasy VII. So I can't fault you in any way. I really, really, really can't. Gameplay and gameplay mechanics. Gameplay was different. They obviously went with a brand new approach to this remake itself. If you are a big fan of the old school Final Fantasy VII with the weight turn-based system, where it's pretty much a player or an enemy moves one at a time, that turn-based system is not utilized in this game at all. They do have an option that allows your characters to do whatever they want, but you're in charge of their ATB moves. So it's kinda like it, but it's not the same in any shape or form. I'm not gonna lie, I was slightly disappointed that they didn't give the players the option to trigger that sort of a feature or a setting. I know it might have put a little bit more time in the development of the game, but what I remember most about Final Fantasy VII is the fact that it was a turn-based RPG, and it played out so magnificently well. And now you've removed that aspect of it and you've made it chaos action, pretty much. There is so much going on during the combat. You can sometimes get lost with what you're doing, and you're switching between the characters as well, utilizing all of their abilities. It can get very overwhelming very, very, very quickly during combat and may cost you a life. So it works. After a while, you will get used to the combat system. You will utilize it very, very well, and you'll get used to it, and you'll adapt pretty well to it. And with the system that they have in play, it works. So I can't fault the system that they have in play. But the combat system does have an issue, and that's something that we'll talk a little bit more about with the notes that I've got written down. Replayability and game difficulty. Now, there is a slight amount of replayability in this game. If you are a perfectionist, if you are a trophy hunter or an achievement hunter, if you want to call yourself that, you will try to gain everything that you can in at least one playthrough. Doing a second playthrough is only really to pick up the little nooks and the crannies, all the small little things that you might have left off. And the game gives you that option after you've completed this series itself. It will give you the ability to go back into certain segments and redo them from the beginning in like a new game plus style. So the game definitely has replayability in it. It really does, especially if you focus solely on all story first, and then after that you then want to do side missions. But if you want my honest opinion, the gameplay does get affected if you actually if you focus solely on side missions as a priority before the story. You'll actually see a little bit of differences between the gameplay itself. So I would definitely recommend going side quests and then story. Game difficulty. At first, the game will be a little bit challenging to get used to because, as I said, the combat is chaos. It really is. But give yourself a couple of hours, you will adapt to it pretty well. And throughout the entire game itself, there are some enemies that their difficulty level against the basic enemies is so much higher. I feel a very small balancing issue with some of the enemies. Some of the enemies you fight later in the game that you can knock down super easy, yet some of them are rock solid and take a lot of staggering or a lot of aggro to knock down. So it's again a system that you'll have to adjust to and get used to, but over time, you'll nail it. Any game customization and stats building. This game doesn't have any character costumes or anything like that, so that's irrelevant. The game does utilize a weapon system that changes depending on which weapon that you're using. So you'll have weapons with certain traits and certain abilities, and they look different, obviously. So if you change from Cloud's Buster Sword to a different sword, he'll actually have that on his back the whole time, and you'll run around with that weapon on your back as well. And each weapon has a core level up system as well that you can go into and unlock its potential pretty much by upgrading its attack power, its magic power, resistances, certain abilities, materia slots. So it's worth going through every single weapon and making sure that all the weapons that you've obtained so far are all being leveled up at the same time, because at some point some weapons will overthrow other weapons in terms of certain specs that you might be looking for your combat, whether you focus solely on attack damage or magic damage. The game gives you that choice. You can play how you want to. In other words, you can use whatever weapon that you wish. The weapons also have their own unique built-in abilities that you can master. Once you've mastered those abilities, you don't have to use that weapon no more if you don't want to. You can switch to another weapon, which is pretty good, because you can bring those abilities over to other weapons and utilize those on that character. And I think that's a fantastic system in this game. Not only do you have your limits, but you've also got your weapon abilities too. So that's a great addition to this game itself that the original never had. Stats building, as I said, for weapons, you've got the core system. And for characters itself, you level up like any RPG itself. The more fights that you do, the more experience that you gain, and thus you can use that experience to level up the weapons and make the weapons stronger. The materia earns experience as you've got it on you through combat. The game doesn't utilize the same materia system that the Final Fantasy VII Retro version did, where once it became a mastered materia, it would divide into two materias, one mastered and one level 1. So be careful with the materia that you find around. You can sell stuff in the game itself at vending machines. You can sell materia as well, so be very, very careful with what you do. The game has a NPC that also takes your combat data and utilize that combat data to create even more unique materia units itself, and even create certain summons as well, which I won't mention. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but it's once you find that NPC, you'll know exactly who I'm on about. Work very hard to get what he wants done, and that will really benefit you throughout the game. Highly recommend it. Story. Story, the biggest one. The kick in the gonads. Oh. Now, the biggest fear, I think, with most people around Final Fantasy Remake is, did they change the story in the worst of ways? Did they take it away from the original concept? Because this, like I said, this is a fear that a lot of people have when any game gets remade. Resident Evil could be a great example for you. Did they keep the same sort of a formula in this game like they did with the original? And I can say, yes, they did. They stuck very, very, very well to the scripting of the original. But what they've done is added to it. They've added a lot more to it itself. You've got way more story with the original Avalanche crew, Jessie Biggs, with all the original guys that were in the team. And Jessie, she's a stunning character. She's so cute, and she has her little side story as well. And they all have their group humor together. So this game takes the original and just makes it better in so many ways. I'm not saying that the old school original was lame in any way. Final Fantasy VII is one of the original retro one is one of my top 5 games of all time, and it is my favorite Final Fantasy game ever made. So this remake takes the original and just adds way more context to it. And I know they're dividing the story up because of how much content they're adding to it. I don't know what they're going to do in terms of prices with each segment of the story. I don't know what they plan on doing. We don't know yet. We just have to wait. There are people speculating, but I don't want to listen to speculations at all. I don't want to listen to gossip or rumors. I just want Square Enix to at some point come out and say, boom, this is what we're going to do with these segments, and this is how much it may cost. I mean, I hope they're fair. I really do, because I mean, I bought the £260 collector's edition, so I hope they're going to be fair. But the story of this remake is breathtaking, emotional, gripping. I had goosebumps on my skin so much during this game. It was just absolutely amazing around every single corner. Every section that you go to, whether it be the slums, whether it be Eris's house, it's full of beauty and it's full of emotion, and that's something that grips me really, really well in a game like this. And I can't wait to see what they do with the next segment. I really can't. Online co-op, not applicable. There is no online co-op. I mean, could they make it where a friend of yours took over your 2 other characters that you were using? Maybe, but then it will break the game quite heavily, make the game way too easy because you're all doing OP super moves all the time. It would just break the game. So no online co-op, irrelevant, completely irrelevant. Nothing to look into. Any online modes? No. Features and stability. Well, the stability of the game. 45 hours in 4 days. I did 3 15-hour streams and then a 9-hour stream, but I did a lot of talking during those streams. I paused the game quite a bit, and I can promise you throughout the whole game I not once experienced any crashes or any corrupted data, and I noticed nothing. The stability of this game is on point. It's been extremely combed over. And I have to say thank you, Square Enix, for taking your time to make sure that this game was a work of art, because the last thing that we wanted was dropped frames during combat or stuttering movie segments or freezes or glitches or stuttering of the combat in any way. Just thank you very much for combing this game over and making sure it was pretty much a masterpiece. Microtransactions or DLC, I guess we just have to wait. You get a DLC slip for extra summons when you get certain editions of the game. You get basically extra 2 extra summons that you can bring into the game. But in terms of DLC and any extra content that they do, I guess we're just going to have to wait and see what Square do. I really don't think they're going to do anything with it in terms of DLC, or they may do the segments of the story as DLC. But obviously you will need to buy the game disc and have the main game so it can run the data off of the main game into each segment that you download. So I look forward to seeing what Square Enix plan on doing with this. I really do. That's pretty much everything off of the review template that we go through itself. The next thing is pretty much to go through any of the notes to see if I can add to that segment or showcase something that we haven't spoken about just yet. We've already talked about it, and this is something I wrote down. We already talked about that there is a classic mode in the game itself, but it doesn't trigger turn-based RPG. There is a lot. I noticed this throughout my gameplay quite a bit. There is a lot of forced progression where, for example, there'll be a treasure chest over there and you want to walk over there, but the game blocks you and says, no, you're not allowed to go over there yet. The treasure chest is right there. It's right. It's a couple of feet away. And I don't think the game needed that crap at all. I really do. I don't understand why there was a lot of forced progression in this game. That was one of my little nitpicks, just one of my irritations. There are no random encounters like you're used to in the old school turn-based RPG Final Fantasy games, where there is no enemies that you can see in front of you, and you're running around, and all of a sudden, and then the music kicks in, and then you're in a random encounter. The game kind of does scripted combat, so it'll only spawn in the enemies that you pretty much need to while you're going from A to B. And you'll find a lot of the time that you're running around and you won't engage in any combat whatsoever itself until you get maybe to the next segment of the game where there's then enemies for you to fight itself. I'm not gonna lie, I miss random generated combat situations. I do. I miss them. But I can't knock points off of this game because they didn't use that sort of a system. They used a different system, which was pretty much scripted combat. And for me, it still worked, but I did want to over level up if I could, just so I could take down bosses with ease instead of having the added pressure that I was either at the right level or under leveled in any way. The AI are not smart enough during combat, and what I mean by that is that your partners, the people that you have with you during combat, their intelligence is just not there. And you'll notice that with two things. The ATB bar that goes up, you'll run into combat with your lead character and your ATB bar goes up quite quickly because you're being aggressive, and your side characters, whether it be Eris and Tifa, Barrett, Tifa, Eris, well, whoever, they're just standing there. They're just standing there a lot of the time. They'll run in every now and again, do a couple of punches, do a couple of kicks, and then they'll step back, and their bar is just not going up enough. And just bear in mind, you need that ATB bar to be full in order to use summons, items, and abilities. So you're having to switch randomly to those characters just because you want them to use a certain ability or a certain trait, because it's just not going up fast enough, and you're sitting there going, will you please fight with me? And if all the characters were as aggressive as you are, a lot of the fights would have been a lot easier to do. So you've got to be quite strategic with that. But here comes quite a nitpick for me, is that the targeting aggro system in this game, I don't like it. If I was to moan at anything quite hard in this remake, the aggro system is awful. And I don't know why they did it this way. I don't, because it just creates way too much frustration. But the aggro system that they utilized is not random. So it's not a random RNG aggro system where the enemy will fight who it wants to. The targeting system is mainly focused on the played character that you're using. And you can test this in your own game by fighting with one character, and you'll see the aggression on your character versus the other two. Then when you switch to another character, the NPCs do a massive U-turn and immediately rush the character that you're then that you're then using. And I think that's a really bad system. It's really bad, because I switch characters to maybe throw a buff out, to throw a heal out, to throw an item out, or if I want to use their abilities in a safe spot. But the problem is they're not safe once you switch to those characters, because the enemies will then do a massive U-turn and then rush that character. And it can get really, really, really frustrating. And I think they should have just used a random battle system, a random aggro battle system, where the enemy itself would fight the way it wants to. It will target certain enemies and certain players' characters in certain ways. There were many, many situations where my two backup party members were in the face of the enemy, beating the living crap out of them, and the enemy ran right around them just to rush me, who was healing in the background. It doesn't make any... It was really bad. It was really, really, really bad. And like I said, if I was to nitpick, I'm going to nitpick on that, because I don't think that's a great system that they've used, in my honest opinion. Have a look. The majority of chests that you open in the game were crap. They were. You could get better items at a vending machine. You run around, you open a chest up, and you get a potion or an ether, and yet you go down a couple of floors and you find a vending machine that's got high potions and all that lot. I think that they did a poor job on the treasure chest system that they've utilized in this game itself. Maybe they should just take out all the small items, like the small potions, and just replace them with high potions and stuff like that, because it's more of a usable item at late game. It got to the point 30 something hours in, I'm running around finding weak stuff in the treasure chests, and it sucks. It really does. It kind of sucks. Red 13, not a playable character in this. He's a guest combatant, so basically he will enter the combat with you throughout the last maybe 5-6 hours of the game, but he is a guest, which means that you can't change none of his equipment, you can't change none of his materia, you can't use any limits or any skills from him. He's just there as an add-on, and I don't know why they did that. I thought it would have just made sense to make Red 13 a playable character. That, to me, would have made more sense, but that's just my opinion. That really is. I'm not going to nitpick at it because it doesn't ruin the game. But obviously, at some point, Red 13 will become a playable character. And he's one of my favorites, to be honest. I tend to have Cloud, Tifa, and Red 13, or Cloud, Vincent, and Red 13 as my final three. Every now and again, I'll put Sid in just because Sid's fantastic. Certain characters... Well, actually, I'm not going to say this bottom one. I'm not going to say this bottom one because this one is potential spoilers. So I'm not going to say any of that. I'm going to keep that spoiler free for you guys. U-turn in NC... Oh yeah, this was something that's weird. We saw this in 2 quest lines. There was a massive U-turn in behavior with 2 NPCs that you did a lot of work for and helped out. And they were all lovey-dovey 1 minute, and then U-turn, and they became instantly aggro-aggressive. And I found that really weird because I thought I did something wrong. I thought there might have been a prompt that came up saying pick which one you'd like to do, and one of those would have turned out to be the aggroing or the upset prompt, where the other one would have been the good prompt. So it kind of really, it threw me off. I was like, wait, hold on. I've just done so much for you. You know, I've just helped you out so much. And then all of a sudden you're now being verbally abusive towards me. It's like, wait, what? What did I do wrong to hurt you when I just saved something for you or I completed your side quest? It threw me off completely. It really did. But that's pretty much everything that, you know, pretty much everything that I've written down. And pretty much everything, you know, trying to think. I mean, the summons in this game was stunning. Absolutely stunning. You don't take direct full control of them, but you can issue them move abilities in the fight, which can really, really, really help the stagger bar and really knock down enemies itself. Leviathan was ruined for me because it was in the loading screen. I was like, oh, thanks, game. Oh, thanks, game. Now I know the Leviathan's in it. Yeah, thank you for that. But Shiva, sexy. She's so beautiful. Ifrit was so badass as well. I can't complain. I really can't. So, with everything, I mean, I'm sure I've missed a few things, but, you know, this is just how I've tried my best to be as detailed as possible. And there are a lot of things that I do want to talk to you guys about, but I don't want it in this review video because I will not spoil it. I will not. I you know, stand by my ethics of being a spoiler free, or as spoiler free if possible. You know, I try my hardest to keep spoilers out of it. So in terms of telling you any more about the game, I'm going to leave it there. But we need to score it, and we need to give a recommendation. Would I recommend people go out and buy this game? Looking at the pricing as well, value for content is something that's very, very important. And in terms of value for content, like I said, you can get the physical copy of the game for £50. Digital, you're looking at 60 plus, so an extra tenner. That's again, I don't understand why digital isn't either the same or cheaper, because it will help push the sales. But in my opinion, is this game a day one purchase? And my simple answer to that is, oh hell yes. If you are a fan of Final Fantasy in any way and you've not picked this game up, then what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? You know, stop what you're doing. Sell the clothes on your back if you have to. Get this game and play it. It is absolutely fantastic. And I am 100% recommending it. 100%. And now, the scoring. This is the moment that a lot of people get excited for. And I tend to be fighting around 2 scores. I don't know why, but I tend to be fighting around 2 scores. But I have to look at the positives and I have to look at the negatives. And like I said, the aggro system is a bitch. It is a pain in the ass. The loot wasn't that gravy, you know, wasn't that gravy at all. And the combat system is chaos. It really is. But those are some minor things. The loot can be changed if they wanted to anyway. But the aggro system, I don't think, can be coded differently unless they change the formula with the next versions of Part 2, Part 3, or whatever. But I am satisfied scoring this game. Oh. I'm scoring this game. Final Fantasy Remake. Final Fantasy VII Remake. An incredible 9.5 out of 10. It is a mind-blowing game. If they would have got the aggro system better, because the aggro system is stupid at times, it really is. With certain boss fights as well, it is dumb, and the interruptions as well, dumb. There's so much, you know, dumb. The loot could have been better in the chests itself. Overall, I'm extremely satisfied with this. It is close. It is just so close to a perfected game where it is a pure 10 out of 10. But I think with those small things that were nitpicking at me, I think they don't deserve to remove a full point. So I'm happy with knocking half of a point off at least. But this game, 9.5 out of 10. And this closes off my review for Final Fantasy VII Remake. Thank you.